Yeah, for example, I didn't ever work in a counseling program or anything like that, but I did work in a like post-divorce care program for kids, and I found children really feed off of personal connections and being able to just make jokes and have fun, and sometimes over the internet and not being with the exact person, it can be really tough for kids to open up and to just talk and to speak about what's in their brain.
I guess, Harold, would you like to add anything about where you think mental health and how the resources would look like in a post-pandemic world?
Absolutely. As I mentioned, I have a lot of family members who are working as frontline workers, and I think that it definitely has impacted them and their lifestyle. Like before, if they're working 12 hours, I have a family member that works a minimum of 18 hours a day now. So I can't even imagine how hectic and uh, I guess intense it is for them. But they are offering many supports from the government or from other organizations and stuff like that. So I think that everyone is kind of coming around and adjusting to this new lifestyle that this pandemic has brought upon us. Because I think we've kind of accepted that this is not a short-term problem. It's going to be quite a while before things go back to the old normal. So I believe that it will take quite a while to adjust. And I definitely don't think that things will be the same. Like it's not possible to have people, you know what I mean, just running around in the playground and big groups and stuff like that. But as of now, I think there is a big turnaround, and everyone is making a conscious effort to make sure that the community and our healthcare workers and frontline workers are safe and are being supported mentally. And I think that that's what matters most, the fact that there is so much support out there.
Yeah, it's good that you really mentioned there are like a lot of supports and kind of resources that have kind of sprouted from this pandemic. And I think like we can also maybe like add some like in our bio for the podcast too, if our audience wants to like find more resources and things like that.
Yeah, so definitely, like y'all mentioned, the number of resources we have readily available has increased a lot, especially during this pandemic. So I guess, do you think technology has sort of eased our experience during this pandemic with all the resources? And do you think that, or what role do you think technology has in the progression of accessible mental health care and resources?
On one hand, I do feel like technology has enabled us to remain connected with our family and friends and community, which is always a good thing. But I feel like it's also turned a lot of what was previously like our normal social relationships into sort of parasocial relationships, where we spend a lot of time viewing the lives of others rather than interacting them directly. I think that's something that it's going to be difficult to come out of post-quarantine. Like, you interact with your friends almost as if they're celebrities, that because you can't have that direct connection like you used to be able to.
Yeah, I think that, like UN said, we're not having those same relationships that we used to be able to have. You can no longer hug your friend. You can no longer speak to a therapist one on one in person. And I think technology has helped in a sense, because without technology, we wouldn't be able to talk to them at all. But at the same time, it's also remembering that not everybody has access to technology, and not everybody has the ability to text a crisis line or to call up a family member. It's really hard for some people to find a way to reach out.
Absolutely. I would say I definitely agree with that. Like it is a very tough and very challenging time for everyone all around. But I think that one thing that kind of keeps me going is I like to just kind of keep in mind that we're all in this together, you know, like we're all going through this pandemic together, and we will come out together. And this honestly will just make us stronger as a community. So I believe that, yes, it is hard. Yes, it is challenging. Yes, we do not have the same access to things we did have before. But the fact that we are making use of all the resources that we have available, and we have different organizations kind of coming up and stuff like that, I think it's amazing. It definitely is challenging, but I definitely do believe that a lot of good things did come out of this pandemic.
If I might also add, just something that I randomly thought about is that a lot of LGBTQIA2S+ youth and adults aren't living in situations where it's okay to be them. And thankfully, I'm living in a house where it's okay to be me, but not every youth has that. And things like Trevor Space and the Trevor Project, where you can have an online community and not have to deal with the things that you are being accepted with at home, but having it online can be really, really helpful for people and just for certain communities. And yeah, I think it's a great thing that we have technology a lot of the time.
Yeah, it definitely is. Like you mentioned, for like the LGBTQ population, for instance, like for not everyone, like staying at home might not be the most like the safest or the most um it might not be the best option, and a lot of the resources that they do have outside could be cut off. And I think something that does come to my mind is also when you talk about people who are undergoing like domestic violence and abuse, like a lot of the times because of the quarantine, they're even more isolated and you have like higher instances of this. And technology does help, like when you do have crisis lines and things like that. But again, like technology allows you to be monitored too. So you also have that aspect of it with like the data monitoring and things like that. And I know like people are working on ways to kind of prevent that as well. So yeah, technology definitely is a part of the conversation.
And also within living through a civil rights movement right now, which I think is amazing, technology allowed us to learn and to have the mental health resources for the people who are affected really by this civil rights movement. And technology allows, I would hope technology allows them to open up and have a space to speak and to have their voice be heard.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that people are getting a lot more engaged online during this pandemic than I feel like they would have been out of it. And part of that is the sense of community and the voice that social media gives these people. But I also feel like there's been a lot of stress from seeing all these things that are going on online, like seeing things that are going on in the world that you feel like you don't have control over. I feel like a lot of coming out of this pandemic is going to be learning to rebalance things in your life, because although it's very important to be aware of these issues, I've noticed that some people have been really negatively affected by this constant barrage of information that you don't get from talking about these things in person. So I feel like transitioning some of these movements to person, like the in-person protests, I feel like are very important despite their risks, because they help put things into perspective in a non-virtual sense.
I do agree that the in-person events and the in-person protests were very important and very much needed, regardless of the risk that COVID had.
Right. So I guess just to wrap up, and dealing with mental health and talking about mental health in these times, it's a really different conversation because of the current circumstances that everyone's going through. And just to, I guess, to end things off, what final tips or resources would you suggest for our listeners to really take care of their own mental well-being?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say I have a few. I would say the first one is try to unplug from the media. I would say more against like on the TV side as opposed to social media, especially because there is a movement that's going on that's amazing. It's life changing. But I would say the media is extremely informative, but for a lot of people, it can make them quite anxious. I would say that it's good to be informed, but it's sometimes a bit of an overkill. Another thing I have to say is physical distancing doesn't mean you have to be alone. Like, we live in a world where we have so much access to technology. So FaceTime, Zoom, Skype, you have so many opportunities and platforms out there that can help you connect to others. And I would say taking on a few new hobbies to keep you occupied and to help you maintain a balanced and healthy lifestyle is so important. I would say just staying cooped up in your room and not doing anything all day is really going to affect your well-being at the end of the day. So just get out there, get some vitamin D, get some fresh air, and it really does make a difference. And you are not alone. We're all in this together, and even though everything is so uncertain right now, it's okay to feel anxious and to feel worried. But just know that there are people out there to help you and support you, and we have so many resources out there. And yeah, that's about all I have to say.
I would have to say be kind to yourself. We're not living in the same world that we were living in 6 months ago, and having the same expectations on yourself that you had 6 months ago isn't, you don't have to do that. We're living in a world where things are completely different, and if you're trying to hold yourself to the same standard that you were in January, it's going to negatively impact you. And also, I know I've said this probably 20 times during this podcast, but reach out. Reach out to an adult, reach out to someone online, reach out to a friend, reach out to a friend's parents, reach out to your parents if you can, reach out to your guardians, whoever you're living with. And also for LGBTQ youth, there's a place called Trevor Space, and you can reach out there and find an online community. And also Mind Your Mind has a bunch of resources online, and there's things for you to find help, to get help, and to show help.
And we can definitely link all those resources when we post the podcast.
Yeah, the other two have brought up great points so far, and I think that one thing is I have to add is remember that this is temporary and this is going to be over in a matter of time. Of course, it might feel like a long time, but it will feel shorter when it's over. And remember that your goals are not dashed. Any progress made this year is not eliminated. And if you need to, take some time for yourself. But if you can, remember that you still have a life after all this, and a lot of the things you're missing right now will come back.
And yeah, just like UN said, remember, it's High School Musical. We're all in this together.
All right, some great messages out there, and I guess this wraps up the end of season 1 for our podcast. Thank you again, Yuan, Maya, and Hira, for joining us today and sharing your experiences with mental health and wellness. Thank you again for tuning in to this episode of Unmasking COVID, and tune in again in late July to catch the beginning of season 2.